This is the Jocko Underground Podcast with Echo Charles sitting across from me at the table of woe here.
Sure.
So, little something called Hofstadter's Law, which is a law. It's a theory created by Douglas Hofstadter, who is a Pulitzer Prize nonfiction winning author. He's a scholar of physics and cognitive science, and he made this law. And what I kind of like about this law is a little bit of a joke, in a way. He even named it after himself, which is kind of funny. Like it's if you find something or discover something, and other people, designate it, but when you're just like, hey, this is my law. And basically the law is that things take a lot longer than you think they're going to. And so the way he describes it is it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's Law. That's the law itself. So even when you know it's going to take longer, which is Hofstadter's Law, it's still going to take you longer than that. So things are going to take longer than we expect them to take, and we have to plan for that. And he originally used this, I believe, around explaining why it was taking chess computers so long to beat humans. They kept saying, "Oh, humans are going to be beat by computers in chess, in a year." And then it was like, well, not quite a year, 5 years. It ended up taking a couple decades before computers could legitimately beat humans in chess. So there was like a little bit of a reference to computer programming, which got me into reading about another rule, which is called the 90-90 rule, which comes directly from computer programming. And it says, I think you'll appreciate this one, the first 90% of code accounts for the first 90% of development time. The remaining 10% of code accounts for the other 90% of development time. So 90 plus 90 is 180. So it's going to take you 180% of time to get the thing done. And what I found interesting about that is, and I thought that you would appreciate this as well. This means that big progress is made kind of early, but it takes a lot of effort to continue to improve. So when we think about lifting, right? You get someone in the lifting out of the gate, they're making the gains.
It's called newbie gains.
Right.
By the way.
Newbie gains. Yeah. But those final touches, I mean, to go from like a bench press of 135 to 250, like people can make up that pretty quick, because they just never worked out. Then all of a sudden they get to that. But then when they get to 250, it takes a while to get them to 275, and then they get to 300, and then they get to like 315, 3 wheels, right?
3 wheels all day, yeah.
But to go for someone that's a good bench, they go from 3 wheels to go to like 340. It might take them 6 months, maybe even longer.
More than that, yeah.
So it applies there. It's like also, I mean, you don't really do any of your own like home building or projects, do you?
Yeah, like fixing stuff, but not building, no.
Yeah.
Really.
This is another thing where like when you build your house or you remodel your kitchen or you add a room onto your house, which I've done all these things, that last like bit of trim and stuff. Dude, so they say like the carpenter's house is never complete because once it gets moved in it, he's like, I'm not doing that other stuff. But this is why, I've been talking about lately that extreme ownership, leadership loop of like what you need to think about when you're making a decision. And I put time at the top. And the reason I put time at the top is because it's the one thing you can't manipulate. You can't control it at all. Now, what we can control is what we do. We can control how we can get ahead. We can prepare ourselves and be ready ahead of the power curve. But you don't have any control over time, so you got to think about it. Now, this is the other thing. What you and I were just talking about, the big moves, right? The big moves come in the beginning. However, that being said, this is Jocko's rule. Just kidding. But another thing to think about is the big moves come, but you actually have to start. And probably the biggest, hardest move in any project, in any endeavor, is the first step. The first time you go to jiu-jitsu is the hardest time you'll ever go to jiu-jitsu, right? Mm-hmm. The first time you ever go to jiu-jitsu is probably going to be the hardest time you ever have to go to jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. The first time you go to the gym is probably going to be the hardest time you'll ever have to go to the gym. And maybe it's like, the first 2 weeks, right? All those 2 weeks, it's like you're getting in the habit. Mm-hmm. First time you go in the cold tub, it gets easier. Cold tub gets easier. I'm cold right now. I got out of the cold tub a couple hours ago, and I'm still cold right now.
Yeah, that's real.
I turned off. I turned off the AC in our space here because I'm freezing.
I understand. It is cold in here too.
Yeah, it is cold in here, and I was in a cold tub and brought my core temperature down to whatever. So these are good things to think about. See, this is what's. I have to use this example. Like, if you go into my house and I tell you I'm going to scare you, I'm not going to be able to scare you. Mm-hmm. Awareness.
Yeah.
Just awareness it makes you so much more prepared and makes you be able to contend with things so much better. So by being aware of the fact that, number one, the first step is the hardest step, you should be aware of that. Mm-hmm. And if you know that, you're like, all right, I'm going to have to go harder right now. I'm going to have to put more effort because I need to go to the gym and I haven't worked out before. Mm-hmm. Or my first day of fasting, it's going to be so hard. You got to know that it's going to be hard. Yeah. And if you're mentally prepared for that, it's going to be better for you. Mm-hmm. I had a really good conversation. I think it was also at camp. I was talking to Jonathan and Ann. They have First In Nutrition.
Montgomery?
Yeah. The Montgomery team. And they were talking, so they help people with nutrition, right? And First In Nutrition. And as we were talking, they what they tell people, or one of their taglines is, you can eat anything, but you can't eat everything. Oh, which makes sense, right? So if you really love pizza, okay, we can put it on your schedule or your plan, but here's what you're gonna have to sacrifice. Yeah. Here's what you can't. If you're gonna have pizza, you can't have. And by the way, having pizza doesn't mean having 3/4 of a freaking pie, right? Dude. Having pizza, you can have it, but you're gonna have a slice, and you're only gonna have it on Wednesdays or whatever. Yeah. So you can have anything, but you can't have everything. Okay, cool. So that was the first part. But then what I related to was, they were talking about how much you can eat of something. And I started recognizing that the expectations that you have play a huge part. And here's how I know this for a fact. What's your favorite dessert to eat?
Me?
Yeah.
Either homemade chocolate chip cookies or chocolate cake.
Okay, let's go with chocolate chip cookies. Mm-hmm. And let's say you're eating... No, we'll go with cake. Mm-hmm. So you're eating your cake.
Sure.
And I roll in. You've got a slice of cake, right? Mm. And I go, bro, that looks really good. Can I have a bite?
Sure.
Will you give me a bite?
I would give you a bite, yes.
Okay. So, and how would you feel? But you've taken 2 bites of your cake. Mm-hmm. I roll in. I go, can I have a bite? Mm-hmm. You say yes. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? Fine. Okay. Now check this out. You're down to your last. There's one more bite.
Oh, yeah.
I roll in, and I say, oh, can I have that bite? You may still give it to me, right. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah,
you don't feel good.
No.
This has happened to me 10,000 times in my life, right? 10,000 times
10,000, okay.
Where people, you get to your last piece of steak, or you get to your last piece of dessert, or you got one more freaking cookie left in the bag of those little cookies that are bite size. Sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what happens is, what I realized, that feeling comes from the expectation. Mm. Because when there's one bite left, you're excited about having the last bite. You already ate the whole freaking piece of cake.
Yeah.
But it's in your head that you got one more bite.
Yeah.
And so when I set that expectation on you, You got issues, dude. Like, I'm like, hey, dude, give me when I take that expectation from you, it's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And it pisses you off. So my point in saying this is, from like an eating perspective, if you go, oh, I'm only going to have one slice of pizza, that's all I get, and you set that expectation. That is a little excerpt of what we are doing on the Jocko Underground podcast. So if you want to continue to listen, go to jockounderground.com and subscribe. And we're doing this to mitigate our reliance on external platforms so we are not subject to their control. And we're doing it so we can give you more control, more interaction, more direct connections, better communications with us, strengthen this legion of troopers that are in the game with us. So thank you. It's jockounderground.com. It costs $8.18 a month. And if you can't afford to support us, we can still support you. Just email assistance@jockounderground.com and we'll get you taken care of. Until then, we will see you mobilized underground.